Hey, how's it going there, folks? Welcome back here. It is the Earthmaster here on this end. Hope everyone's having a great Saturday so far. It is the weekend. It is upon us, so might as well get out and enjoy it. Latest activity here shows a 2.4 earthquake into the area of the Mediterranean region. Looks like some further movement to the west as well. 4.3 striking here in this area. We'll get to the earthquake activity around the globe here in just a little bit. Want to cover the Reno, Carson City area earthquake activity that's been stirring up out here. We've seen a couple more earthquakes since last night. Yesterday we did see a 3.2 stirring up here, one of the larger events. And this earthquake swarm that's been going on here for a couple months. We're coming up on, I think well over 200 and something earthquakes here in this area, specifically outside the Steamboat Springs area. Now, someone mentioned that this could be volcanic. Steamboat Springs here, last volcanic activity was 1.4 to 2.53 million years ago. No recent activity has been noted here across the Steamboat Springs volcano. It's obviously an ancient volcano, and we haven't seen any elevated activity out here. There is hot springs in the area, so that tells us that there's still, some obviously hotter areas below the surface. Got about 50 active hot springs, numerous steam vents, and these fumaroles, and an active producing geothermal field. But as far as it being strictly volcanic activity in terms of the earthquake swarm, I think that's highly doubtful. There was a 6.4 out here in 1869. This earthquake is right here in the pin, 6.4, 1869. That's where that large earthquake struck there a while back. And it's roughly in that same area where we're currently seeing an earthquake swarm take place there. So they got Steamboat Springs marked here specifically in this area, at least on the map. But I don't think it's related. There's numerous fault systems that run out here. Numerous. Nevada's absolutely riddled with fault systems. And it's not the Mount Rose fault zone. There's a couple other unnamed faults that run through here. And that's kind of where we're seeing the earthquake activity at. And a lot of people stating that seeing, a couple hundred earthquakes here over the last 2 months or so is good, that it's relieving stress. And that's always been a question, right? Do these earthquake swarms relieve stress along a fault system? To an extent, I guess small earthquakes can release a small amount of accumulated stress that could otherwise, build up and release in a sudden larger event. But think about it. They can also transfer stress to other nearby faults or other fault systems, which can actually trigger a larger fault. In the overall picture, if you think about it, the overall picture here is that there is stress in the area, built up stress. And if we go back here, I just want to show you guys real quick we're going to show you guys the all magnitudes here in the last couple months in that area. A lot of people, and it makes a little sense, right? If you're thinking about it, the swarming activity slowly releasing stress that's been built up, but I think that's a little questionable. Let me go over here to the Steamboat area, and we'll check out this region that has been seeing this earthquake swarm. I just want to show you guys. I want to make sure I cover that right, and we'll take a look at the last couple months. And it's 291. So almost at 300 earthquakes here in this area of Steamboat, Nevada area, which sits just to the southeast here of Reno, just literally 5 miles or so outside of town. And it is really close to a populated residential neighborhood, but we've noticed a couple different patterns of swarms here. And 291 earthquakes, right? Largest magnitude is going to be a 3.5 back in January. So think about that. Basically, the amount of energy released by a high magnitude quake, say this area can see another 6.4, is hundreds to thousands of times greater than a small quake. So technically, you would need probably about 1,000 4.0 earthquakes to equal at least one magnitude 6.0 quake. So that's mathematically, right? Think about the amount of energy in each point that you go up in terms of magnitude. So you would need about 1,000 M4 earthquakes to equal at least one 6-pointer out here. And we know the 6-pointer activity can occur. We've seen one back in 1869, right? So, these little earthquakes, are they relieving stress a little bit? If you want to think of percentage-wise, maybe yes, for a little bit, for a small amount. But the overall picture here is that things are elevated out in this area, in this region. Stress is building up in overall terms here. So it's something to watch, right? And let me, the reason why I point towards stress out here instead of volcanic activity in terms of fault systems is where'd my map go here? Did I lose it? Let me go back here real quick. There's been all right, real quick here. Let me modify the search here real quick. I want to check something else out. Redefine this, because this is not the only area that's been seeing swarms out here in the last couple months. So that's why this is more plate stress, more fault stress out here across Reno. Reno is actually the third most active state out here in terms of seismic activity. California and Alaska being the number 1 and 2. So let's use this region, and I want to look here because Reno's had a couple different swarms out here recently. Here's one that popped. Well, it didn't pop, but we've seen some swarming out here back in early January, specifically in this area of Reno. And we've seen these little migration patterns of stress built up around the region. Now, this is not a super volcano. It's not, I don't think this is volcano activity. This is all stress related out here across Nevada. And again, Nevada is, a very active state, and they can see some large earthquakes. It just takes a little time for the stress to build up out here to create these quakes. In 1869, I don't know what the slip rate is out here on one of these fault systems where this earthquake activity is occurring, but that's a little bit of time has passed, right? 150 years, 1869, 1969, about 160 years or so. So obviously, there's quite a bit of strain building up out here in that short amount of time. So the only thing I'm pointing towards here, folks, is that this definitely could be leading to something bigger around the region. Specifically, it may not actually be exactly on this fault system. It could just be nearby where we see a larger event. So anytime we see earthquake swarming like that out there, we just got to watch it, right? We've seen earthquake swarms in the past, and they happen just prior to a large event. So to say scientifically that earthquake swarms completely relieve stress out here and reduces the chance of a big one is not accurate at all. It does not completely squash the larger threat out here. These little earthquakes, 600, 700 of these little ones still don't even make that much of a difference. A small percentage, yes, maybe a fracture of a difference. So that's still going on overnight here. Still seeing some earthquake activity out here. Most of it looks like it was below the 1.0 threshold, but still watching the Reno area. All right, backing out of here. Southern California seen some further activity as well down here, out in the hazard zone. I call this because this is where a lot of the strain transfers off of the plate boundary, just on the North American side of the San Andreas Fault here around the Little San Bernardino mountain range. 2.0, about 1 o'clock in the morning. It's been somewhat elevated out here, I'd say, for movement specifically in this area lately. Along the San Jacinto Fault Zone, that's obviously a very active fault, secondary here to the San Andreas Fault. There's quite a few other fault systems here on the Pacific side of the plate boundary that obviously accumulate quite a bit of stress, and we see all this small earthquake activity on any given day. But the San Andreas Fault is the one that we want to watch, right? That's the one that's been built up for over 300 years and is very capable of producing 8.1. An 8.1 out here would put this area in quite a bit of strain and stress far as civilization goes. So we don't want an 8.1, but it's eventually going to happen. Not going to be like the movie, right? The San Andreas. It's not going to be like that movie. I don't think it's not designed like that. The plate boundaries aren't designed. So 8.1. Let's keep that at bay. But whenever I see activity out here across this area, it's just kind of watching it. All right, up around Ridgecrest area, handful of smaller quakes in here as well. So aside from the swarm there in Nevada, Northern California, for the most part, pretty quiet. Nothing going on across the Pacific Northwest. It is the weekend. They stopped reporting the smaller quakes for whatever reason. They'll get to it Monday, I'm sure. So most earthquakes would have to be above 2.5 to show up here on the USGS map. And that means Yellowstone as well. Let's double check Yellowstone here, see what's going on. No major earthquake swarm. No unusual activity that I can see out there across the area for now. The rest of the country, Oklahoma is still seeing a handful of earthquakes and a couple spotty regions out here. I'm trying to think if there's any oil fields out here. A lot of these areas are oil field or wastewater disposal facility related. There's one right here, a gas and oil field. A lot of earthquake activity happening here this morning. And some over here as well. So a lot of the weaker crustal areas getting hit along the North American plate. And, that obviously will continue for quite a while. There's quite a few oil fields that have been produced out here. 3.6, Puerto Rico, right smack dab on the Puerto Rico Trench. Not a whole lot of activity here previously, at least in the last couple days, but, this is another hazardous area subduction zone that's very capable of producing some large damaging earthquakes. Anywhere you're out here along the plate boundary, even these intraplate fault systems here, like the New Madrid seismic zone and some areas here around the Carolinas, it's been a little while since we've seen any larger scale movement out here, so we're looking in the future here. No doubt those big earthquakes will pop up again. The question is when. And, we definitely know that we can get some large earthquakes there on those intraplate quakes. Alaska area still seeing quite a bit of microquake activity. As far as 2.5 and above goes, well, that dropped it down quite nicely. Looks like a 2.7 here back prior to the subduction zone level around the Seamount area. Aside from that, again, mostly microquake activity. And we have seen some quieting down out here across the western Pacific. Not a whole lot there showing up on the USGS map. A lot quieter, I would say. This is the last 24 hours, and man, it looks absent of earthquake activity. So something's about ready to brew out here. Now, over the last couple days, we've seen a lot of clustering going on here across the Philippines, working its way up across the area of the Java Trench, the northern Sumatra area. Did see a 3.0. It really hasn't advanced too much further up along the plate boundary, but I'm more concerned about areas Papua New Guinea eastward here along this plate boundary. I'm talking about Solomon Islands, Vanuatu area. That's one section. And then we've also seen a lot of deeper activity here in the Tonga Trench, working its way down into the Kermadec Trench. We've seen a lot of deeper activity here. It's pretty much skipped over New Zealand, and in the last week we've seen larger scale event 6s out here recently. Let me pull up the last 7 days and show you guys. Here's the 6s there around the Macquarie Island area. Pretty much skipped the New Zealand area. Yes, we're seeing deeper activity here recently, but really no surface adjustment here across the plate boundary. There's activity working its way down along the Kermadec Trench, and this is just a minimal amount of activity here on the USGS map. We have seen some further activity work its way down here. And some of these are shallow events, but we have seen some deeper earthquakes here in this area, and of course under North Island. So if you look at these two quiet zones that really haven't seen much earthquake activity, it would make sense to see some movement here soon. A lot of areas have been hit across this region. Things have come to a standstill right now. So let's watch these areas. Papua New Guinea eastward to Fiji, and around the Kermadec Trench southward into the New Zealand area. These are the regions that really haven't moved. while all other areas have seen quite a bit of movement taking place here. Across the Mediterranean areas, there's a 2.7 coming in right now. Let me see where that's at on the EMSC model. 2.7 Poland, about 4 minutes ago, coming in there. Let's see where that other quake is. They showed a 4-pointer on there. Bring up the world map here and see what we got. That's going to be Algeria area, it looks like. 4.3 coming in. That was 13:54 UTC time, so a few hours ago. A little bit of activity stirring up out here today, it looks like. This is the last 24 hours. That swarming area there in the Ionian Islands region, swarming up here again, it looks like. Nothing in the last hour, but over the last week or so, this area has seen a lot of swarming going on, and really no main quake yet. But it's something to watch. Obviously, some strain going on out there in that area of Greece. Italy looks fairly quiet out here for now. The Atlantic Ocean, getting some further activity up here in the Iceland area around Grindavik and along the further rift boundaries out here. So let's go check out the Iceland activity here. See what we have. Make sure I got the most recent data, which I believe we do. 2.8 occurring. That's just southwest here of our area of interest along the rift zones. And I said to watch for some earthquake activity. It looks like it did pick up slightly overnight. This 2.8 coming in a couple hours or so ago, but we're getting a little bit of earthquake activity around the Grindavik area and areas just to the west. Now, most of our eruptive activity here with the Iceland activity has been to the northeast of Grindavik along a, you gotta draw an imaginary line here. It's a magma intrusion area that kind of stirred up a lot of interest here in this area back in November of last year. I remember that that magma intrusion, that dike, rolled around underneath the surface here for a little bit, caused some rising of the ground around Grindavik and then some sinking after it moved away. This area is still in a target zone in terms of seeing eruptive activity. More recently we've seen that, was it the January event? I think the eruptive activity stirred up. We had a couple different fissures here open up. One just outside of town that unfortunately hit a couple houses here on the northern end of Grindavik. But our most recent eruption has been up here around the Slingerfell region along these fracture zones here and kind of spilt out, making its way towards the Blue Lagoon area and the power plant, but they diverted that. So earthquake activity stirring up here today, southern end of that magma dike intrusion. So got to watch it. I don't think it's going to happen yet. We are still looking at some elevated inflation going on here in the area, but I'm really not seeing the elevated earthquake activity that I would expect to see prior to any eruptive event. Let's go check out, see what we got here for the Icelandic Meteorological Office. This was put out 2 days ago. But this is the same reading that they've been saying here for about 2 weeks now. They even said this: increased chances of eruption in the next few days. I remember reading about that in February, the end of February. So this has been put off a little bit. Obviously, there's magma accumulation underneath the area, but we really haven't seen the major divergent boundaries out here showing activity. That would mean north and south here of Iceland. The Atlantic's been quiet. Once we start seeing further divergent zone activity, that means that we got further influx of magma from below, and I'm not seeing that yet. So I think we got a little time before things really stir back up out here in terms of eruptive activity. A look at the GPS, see if they've updated these 8-hour run times here. This was put out, this is recent, I think. Let's go to the Grindavik area. And this one still doesn't show that it's online here. It's still showing just that one dot. This should have updated by now. Not for sure what's going on. Either way, if you look at the model trends here, still seeing elevated activity. Obviously, there's swelling going on underneath the region, inflation, and that is due to accumulation of magma. We are coming up on that, roughly a 30-day time period here in between eruptions, and we've seen it in the last couple eruptions. It's been about 30-day intervals between these eruptions. So we're getting close. Where's the Savartsingi area? Let me see what we got here. Obviously, here's that steady flow of inflation, right? There hasn't been any major droppage, which would indicate a large displacement of magma somewhere else or the eruptive activity at the surface, and that hasn't taken place here. So, obviously, no eruption yet. The key, watch for earthquake activity across the area, and this is the last 7 days, right? Look at the Atlantic out here. Very quiet. It seems as though just days before, maybe even a day before eruptive activity begins, we see further divergent zone activity up here on a broad scale. And that affects the areas across the Iceland region. So right now, again, just kind of watching it. It's kind of at a standstill. All right, what else we got here on the Earthquake 3D globe? Let's see what else is happening around this beautiful planet we live on. South America region, I mean, almost always active. Always active. 2s and 3s, just like similar to California. You always see earthquake activity out here on any given day, and that's very normal. Might seem like a lot of activity, but that's very typical here across the South America region. No big earthquake activity to report there, though, for now. Same with the Middle America Trench. Very active subduction zone. 4s and 3s, quite a bit stirring up out there. There's that deep activity from this morning. That's a 5.5. All this deep activity and really no surface adjustment going on here across the region. That's definitely of concern, because if you think about it, when things move down into the subduction zone, it just doesn't automatically disappear as far as the strain and the stress goes. That means that we're building upstream somewhere or further along the plate boundary here. But like I say, let's watch these two areas here today. I think New Zealand and Papua New Guinea eastward across the region to Fiji. Could probably draw a couple X's here across this area. All right, what else we got? I think that's about it for earthquake activity. And that 2.9, let's see, let's go back here and check out that 2.9. That's over there in the Carolinas. I just mentioned that about, this area being in a major hazard zone. Well, it's a little bit more closer to the North Charleston area down here, but it is still within that zone, that earthquake activity right now, within that hazard zone. But this area can see some big earthquakes. It's been a little while since we've seen any larger movement there, and also, across the New Madrid seismic zone. Earthquakes can happen well away from the plate boundary. We know that. All right, guys, let's check out space weather activity. See if we got any magic sunspots popping up here. It doesn't look like it. In fact, we've been pretty steady here over the last few hours. Down in the boring class, right? I call the B class here boring X-ray flux or X-ray flare class. Not a whole lot going on. That's very minimal solar conditions. In fact, only an 80% chance for a C flare, M flare at 20, X flare around 1% chance or so. And that's due primarily because we don't have a whole lot of active regions out here. There's a couple sunspots, but you could have this entire section of the sun filled with hundreds of sunspots of this size, and there won't be anything going on. So you got to have the complexity, the structure, the polarity here of the magnetic fields need to be all over the place to create these special sparks, so to speak. These magnetic lines interact with each other, and you get that solar flaring. But I'm not seeing it on any of these sunspots. Again, this is about the only area that may be of interest, and even so, it looks about the same as what it did last night. There's not a whole lot of complexity in that region. Far as our expected G1 class storm, where to go? Right, I think we're expecting that on the 06 time frame, March 9th, but that has long since passed us. We're in this stage right here, 12 to 1800 time frame right now in the UTC time. Actually, we're past that now. We're into the 1900, so we're right about here. So more than likely, that potential G1 class storm was about here last night. Got up to about 4 or so. Just barely a glancing blow. Remember when we checked this out a couple days ago, I said not to expect much. Well, that's that. All right. Storm Prediction Center here across the states. This is a current day 1 convective outlook. This tells us where the severe weather is going to take place here today. Looks like a slight risk category here across Florida and the Carolinas, with a couple 5% zones here in the darker shade, followed by a 2% area around that. Either way, if you're out here in this region, anywhere in this zone, heads up for rotating water vapor out there. Good chance of tornado probability. Along with some wind and some hail threats in there as well. But it looks like the tornado threat going to be the main primary severe weather threat today. So just a heads up. After that, tomorrow, looks like we got that low pressure system here across the Pacific Northwest, bringing with it some cold, unstable air, producing maybe some thunderstorm activity. It's not really supposed to do much here for California. The storm that's coming in today is just going to be mainly, I don't know, probably around Redding northward or so. But tomorrow, Sunday night, we got a chance of rain coming in. It's just going to be a quick shot here across Northern California. After that, maybe another storm system, and then things begin to warm up and dry out. These weather models have changed since last night. So I don't like going so far ahead, but it looks like we are going to enter in some warmer temperatures here as we head into the about the 15th time period. Right now we got some cooler air, warmer air out here across this area of the country. This is the temperature anomaly showing departure from normal. And watch that cold air get displaced. And Pacific Northwest, look at that. We got a massive high pressure system building up here. Going to be warming these guys up and warming Northern California up as well. Colder air moving down back into the center portion of the country, Great Lakes area. And that cold air is going to be reinforced by another cold air event, and that's due to the jet stream going way up north and then heading right back down into this area. California going to be cooking for a little bit, but I'm okay. Look at that. That's another cold blast. So you guys got several waves of cold air coming in here to finish off the rest of March, it looks like. All right, but I think I'm ready for some warmer weather. I'll take 70s. I'll even take 80s, but I'm not quite ready out here for 90s and 100s. Where I live outside of Chico, California, the Sacramento Valley is kind of like a mini Death Valley out here. If you really think about it, we're surrounded by mountains here on the side. We get downslope north winds here that really cook the valley. And unfortunately, that's where I live. Some beautiful mountains out here. We had quite a bit of rain this winter, so I'm happy with that. So I guess I have to just deal with it, and we'll go from there, right? Have to break out the swimming pool once it gets up above 90 or so. All right, folks, I think that's about it. Seismograph stations all look pretty quiet for now. Again, with the Reno activity, it's a swarm that's been going on for a couple months now. Whether this leads to something bigger or not will we'll have to see. But still, a couple months of these little tiny earthquakes do not really amount to too much release in the stress. If anything, it's telling me that stress is continuing out here in this area. Obviously, without stress, you don't get earthquakes, right? Earthquakes just don't relieve themselves because nothing's happening. These earthquakes are happening because of further stress out here in the region. So that is, that's just a simple understanding of plate tectonics. And we'll watch this area of Reno here pretty closely. This area, let's go back here and check out a couple things. I just want to show you guys how active Reno, not only Reno, but Nevada can be. Let's go way back in time to the year 1000. I wonder what it was like in the year 1000. I don't know if I'd want to be out here. Maybe I might. So I just want to look at roughly here. We're just going to cover a good portion here of of Nevada. Las Vegas area is another hazard zone that can see some large earthquakes down there. There's fault systems all over the place in Nevada. So this is, hopefully it doesn't blow up my computer, 342 earthquakes of 4.5 and above. Okay, look at some of these larger events that takes place out here in Nevada. 7.3. Hello. That's a little weird. Froze up on me. Let's refresh that. Okay, that's a little strange. 7.3. Fairview Peak, Nevada. That's way out here, away from Reno. Off on 50, out in the middle of Nowhereville. 1954. Dang, that's a pretty large earthquake. Specifically around the Reno area, obviously there's that 6.4 that I've been chatting about. South of here, seen a 6-pointer in 1868. Further up close to Reno, seen a 6.4 in 1914. So, you know, looking at these magnitudes here, what's something we all can agree on? That there's been a lot of time passed since these big earthquakes. You know, 1860, or 1860 on the other one. This is 1914, still well over 100 years. A 6.4 out here today, right in this area. Park Lane Mall. Yeah, that would be, you know, damaging. So, you know, a lot of people get complacent. They forget about history. And that doesn't matter, geology, politics, business, anything. Once you forget history, you get surprised again in the future and caught off guard. So it's always good to look at history and know what can take place out here. A lot of earthquake activity, and some big earthquake activity at that. And that's just covering a portion here of Nevada. There's fault systems all over the place. I remember this area up here. A lot of this activity happened in 2014, 2015. A lot of people thought this was a volcano. So I went up there to study it. Drove out here on these dirt roads for many, many, many miles. Dirt roads. It was like an hour's drive on dirt roads. Nothing out there. No power poles, no people, nothing. But actually, there's a little site up here. It used to be called the Sheldon National Antelope Refuge, but they changed it. There's a little house up there where some of the federal workers live, and then they work on the land. Really nice people. I actually met them. I broke down up there on a return trip, and they let me stay there the night at their a little cabin there, and then I fixed up my vehicle and then headed home the next day. But very nice people. Not a lot out there. I did see quite a bit of volcanic rocks there, a lot of obsidian rocks, a lot of other type of volcanic rocks up there. But again, there's a lot of stress up here. These could be some lava type domes underneath the area, or not domes, but lava tubes, so to speak. Right? This whole area was volcanic at one point in time. So that's why I had to go up there, and you know, a lot of these earthquakes happen very shallow at the surface level, some very deep. But it was definitely an interesting event. We had a whole bunch of fours, a whole bunch of other smaller quakes up there, and you know, it's either fault related or it could be, you know, like I said, a lot of underground volcanic tunnels, I guess, underneath the area that maybe were collapsing due to the stress out here. But there was quite a bit going on. As far as further magma, volcanic activity in that nature, no. I didn't see any signs of that. What's going on here? Something weird's going on with the USGS history page here. 6-pointer, 1915. Yeah, there's been a lot going on here historically, and it's been a long while, folks. Been quite a while since we've seen any larger movement out here. And these are just the documented ones. You know, who's to say there's not further ones out here? But yeah, Reno Sparks area, obviously a major seismically active zone and a hazardous area as well in terms of a large earthquake activity. All right, folks, so I'm just going to be off on the side, kind of watching things right now with this quietness going on. I'm waiting for something to happen. Let's keep an eye on these areas as mentioned and see what happens between now and tonight's update. Have a good day. We'll catch you guys back out here a little bit later this evening.